Okay, so Assalamu alaikum and welcome to SR Asia International Dialogue 2020 webinar series. This is let you to know that as part of SR Asia core area of works, promoting CSR and sustainability is one of the main activity of SR Asia, which we started since 2012 in different countries. The 2020 webinar series has been started from 8 September, and today we will discuss on corporate social responsibility, which has gone mainstream and is no longer just the province of a few idealistic companies pushing their causes. So with more organizations placing CSR at the center of their corporate communication and strategy, and with more research showing that CSR is tightly tied to corporate success. So the measurement of corporate social performance has become very essential now. So the social and economic challenges posed by COVID-19 have really emphasized the true value of identifying a business's strength and weakness, as well as recognizing and mitigating material risk. So these days, companies are eager to cite progress when it comes to their ESG, that is environmental, social, and governance goals. Even investors are getting on board, taking a closer look at organizations' ESG performance before they make any decision. So there are even mutual funds out there that steer investments and toward companies with solid ESG ratings. So let me today introduce with the speakers today with you all. Today we are pleased to bring speakers from Bangladesh Bank, former CSR guideline development focal of IICA, and representative from multinational company based in Bangladesh, and also some domestic companies. So let me say a few words about Gayatri Subramaniam. She is basically based in India, who has more than 32 years academic, industrial, and government experience. Gayatri is one of the leading experts on CSR in India. Before starting her own initiative in July 2019, Gayatri was working with HDFC Life Insurance Company, handling the company's CSR, L&D, and sustainability initiatives till June 19. So from 2009 to 2018, she was with Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs under the aegis of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, contributing towards policy advisory service, capacity building, and knowledge dissemination initiatives in the field of CSR. She has been an integral part of the process involved in the evolvement of the new legislation of CSR in India. She played a major role in establishing National Foundation for Corporate Social Responsibility, which is a unique platform created for government, corporate, and NGOs for taking up development and sustainable initiatives at a national level. Gayatri was also involved in the development of national voluntary guidelines for social, economic, and environmental responsibility of business and business responsibility reporting framework that was mandated by SEBI for top 500 companies listed on Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. So Gayatri is a part of various CSR advisory committees like CII, Delhi Management Associations, etc. So welcome Gayatri to our webinar series, and thank you very much for contributing to today's session. And now I am introducing Christabel Ronald. Uh, she is a legal and external affairs of professional with more than 12 years experience as practitioner with tier 1 law firms, consultant to international development organizations, and senior leadership at blue chip multinationals. She is a mentoring enthusiast and agile learner. Her professional commitment is to educate unprivileged children through the School of Hope. Christabel is the Director of Legal and Corporate Affairs in Marico Bangladesh Limited. Again, thank you, Christabel. And within a short notice, you accepted my invitation. Thanks a lot. And now I am introducing representative from Bangladesh Bank, because before introducing her, I want to say that we know, but just I can share with you that CSR guideline for the scheduled banks and financial institutions. So today we have Kaji Mutmainna Tahmida. She is the Joint Director of Sustainable Finance Department in Bangladesh Bank. She has worked in Department of Banking Inspection, Human Resources Department, Department of Off-Site Supervision, Agricultural Credit and Financial Inclusion Department, Green Banking and CSR Department, and Sustainable Finance Department. She has diverse work experience in different areas on financial sector, like policy on Camel's rating system, corporate social responsibility, sustainable finance, climate finance, sustainability reporting, environmental and social risk management of banks and financial institutions. She holds BBA and MBA in finance from the University of Dhaka. Okay, so thank you everybody. Thanks all of the speakers for today's session. And so this is all about our today's speakers. And getting into the main discussion, I just want to say that the tangible benefits of measuring corporate social performance is very clear. From reputational advantages that boost long-term business performance to customer performance for companies with socially responsible records, organizations are realizing the myriad benefits of a strong social impact work. And the benefits that come from maximizing their impact through tracking. But how CSR can contribute during this pandemic? We know there are lots of contribution from different companies like Tata, Marico, Epilion Group, and IT companies are playing a very important role during this crisis. So coming back to main discussion, I will start with Christabel. So Christabel, I had also discussion with you a few minutes back. So now if you share how sustaining business and profitability can help COVID recovery, if you share with us.
Thank you, Maya, and thanks to SR Asia for having me here on this program with two such esteemed and experienced panelists. I'm actually really honored to be here. So, coming back to the question, I think COVID recovery is not something that's going to happen suddenly, or it's not something that's an event that we should wait for it to happen. COVID recovery is actually going to happen by doing business sustainably and by doing business responsibly. And when I say that, I think the first thing which we would come to is basically how can you responsibly manage the situation as an organization. The first responsibility that we have is, of course, to our people. and not just people who are directly working with us, but in the entire ecosystem that is involved with running a business. Whether it is your factory workers, whether it is your suppliers, whether it is your outsourced personnel, whether it is your distributors. So that entire ensuring the safety, security, the income of that entire ecosystem is what is actually going to see countries and organizations through a recovery path. What do I mean when I say that? Firstly, there are certain things about, what are the kind of measures we would take. Nobody expected this pandemic, but what we did do is, as responsible organizations, corporate governance dictates that you have certain business contingency plans in place. It dictates that you have these standard operating procedures in place, which you trigger. And to give few examples, initially we all were coming to know about what to do to prevent COVID from the WHO advisories. And we realized that while it's very easy to disseminate this information with people working in a head office or at certain managerial levels, but disseminating this information to the extended supply chain is critical. So the first line of action, while we definitely went into work from home and limited operations to a great extent, we ensured that everybody was repeatedly consistently communicated about what are the SOPs and what are the responsible measures to ensure that safety, health and hygiene, because we know how contagious it is. And if we don't ensure that people who are in our ecosystem are aware of that fundamental responsibility, we could be the cause for further spread. Secondly was, of course, because a big part of ensuring sustainable businesses and ensuring profitability and people's livelihoods also requires you to continue your operations. So while there was a lot of, we've seen lockdowns all over the world, Bangladesh also, we went through an extended period where economic activity had stopped. But at the same time, if we look world over, certain essential facilities, essential products, consumer products were allowed to operate. And of course, the pandemic has not affected all industries equally. Some industries were very severely affected. But for example, Marico, which is a consumer products company, fast moving consumer products good manufacturer, we were less impacted because we had to ensure supplies of soap, we had to ensure supplies of hand sanitizers, all of these essential products to the market, edible oil, uh, and everything which is a personal care product. So when you say essential care, it's not just soaps and hand sanitizers. Today, none of us actually pass a day without brushing our teeth. None of us actually pass a day without, no matter which strata you're looking at, there are certain personal care habits, consumption of food, consumption of edible oil will happen. So ensuring that was critical, and how responsibly we operate that with only a bare minimum workforce was again another challenge that we had to overcome, which we successfully did. With regard to ensuring that the sales and supply in the market are carried on responsibly, we leverage technology, and we've all seen the boom of e-commerce and how all of us have been ordering, on Chaldal and Daraz and using Pathao rather than sending people out, rather than having salespeople out in the market. And right now, these have become very standard examples. I'm sure Marico, this is not unique to Marico. Many companies have done it. But taking these timely measures, having these clear protocols, and actually doing business responsibly is the first step to ensure that you are playing your part in managing this pandemic and also managing a path to recovery. With regard to what we traditionally understand as CSR, philanthropy or giving, and there again, we had a very clear choice. While there were many organizations coming forward. We saw the NGO sector, the development sector working very hard to, support people who were absolutely, being pushed into poverty, loss of income, migrant workers. We decided that first we would like to partner with the government because that's a centralized fund. And I think at this point in time, the governments required as much support from the private sector they could get, both in terms of resources as well as in terms of, simply dialogue and knowledge sharing. Uh, Marico in Bangladesh, we already have a partnership with UNDP and the government of Bangladesh where we work with ultra poor women. So, in continuation of that, we did commit CSR funds to the government initiatives. And at the same time, using that CSR platform we had, we also got together with a couple of other companies where we had continuous dialogue and discussion with the government and UNDP as to how this supply chain sustainability, how ensuring the right SOPs will have, and that common understanding. It's not that that is also very important because organizations tend to take these decisions in silos. And what we realized that talking to other organizations and having a common understanding between the industry as well as the government was also very critical in ensuring that we are taking a common responsible approach to managing the situation. And for us, we did, of course, support communities surrounding our manufacturing operations, especially because we know that it's not just workers or permanent workforce, but there's a large number of daily workers. There are a large number of casual workers. And because operations had to be either closed or limited to such an extent, all of those people were having loss of income. So whether it is food support, whether it was humanitarian allowances to our extended sales system, we ensured those things as CSR measures. And something very interesting, at this point in time, all companies realize that this is not really a time for exhausting your marketing budgets on advertising and marketing communications. So what we did is we channeled some of that. All companies, we all do, like, free offers, we do consumer offers, we do samplings. And we realized that this is not going to be relevant during a pandemic. So those same things we channeled into what we would have given as sample to consumers. Can we give them as samples to low income groups, to people who will actually not be able to go out and buy a product for themselves? And I think even just rechanneling your own budgets to people who are in need is what we believe is the sustainable way, the responsible way of doing business, which can actually support the recovery process.
Um, yes, done. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Christabel. But yes, you rightly said about the organizations taking measure about the, also the employees are also very big major stakeholders of implementing for any CSR activities by the organization. So how corporate, what do you think that how corporate governance or welfare practice can support COVID recovery?
So corporate governance, I think, the first thing is that when we do CSR, or whether when we do any kind of giving, whether it's a social investment or it's a business investment, from a corporate governance perspective, we have very clear principles on that. While in Bangladesh, except for the banking sector, non-banking sector doesn't really have a CSR guideline. But because our parent company is incorporated in India, we do take those learnings, we take those principles, and we follow that uniformity. So when I say corporate governance, it's also about how accountable you are to all your stakeholders, whether it is your shareholders, whether it's your employees, whether it's the society in which you operate in. So having those clear principles, making those disclosures, ensuring that, because when you say good corporate governance, it also means that you have an independent board that is, demanding that accountability from you. So just having those processes even before the pandemic is what helped us take decisions very quickly.
Yes, thank you, Christabel. Thank you very much for your insights. and also people are very much eager to know about the CSR activities which are done by, especially by the companies, private sectors, being with multinational or local company. Today, actually, I invited one of the largest company in Bangladesh, the domestic company, Epilion Group, but due to some unavoidable situation, the CSR senior manager Nazmul Hassan, he could not join. If he could join, then we could know more about the CSR activities to combat COVID-19 on the perspective from local organizations. So yes, now if I come back to Gayatri, I will come to Bangladesh Bank at the end of this session, because we have lots of expectation from regulators. Regulator. So Gayatri, um, what do you think that what are the challenges for corporate to adopt the national CSR guideline? Because we know that you are the focal person who was a driving personality to develop the CSR guideline in India. So yes, if you share with us the challenges what you face for corporates to adopt the national CSR guideline.
Yeah, thank you, Sumaya. It's always a pleasure to speak on any SRHF platform. Uh, the association goes very long back. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes,
Hello?
yes,
Yes, you
Am
are.
I audible? Okay.
yeah.
Because I could not see Sumaya's screen froze. So thank you so
Internet
much for.
interruption.
Uh, yes, I was fortunate enough to be at the right place at the right time when so much things were happening in India. CSR journey goes back to 2007, and like when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister, he spoke about something called 10-point social charter, and then voluntary guidelines came in on social, environmental, and economic responsibilities. As Christabel said about responsible business practices, that was very much prevalent in India in 2009 itself, when these guidelines were issued, and SEBI, the financial regulator of India, mandated it for listed companies on Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. And then, at the cost of boasting, I would say India is the only country where corporate social responsibility has been mandated. And after a great struggle, it was like, since being a democratic country, the entire process evolved through a participative uh, consultation method. And we went to corporates and told them that they have to spend 2%. The law says that they have to spend 2% of their average profit every year towards social obligations. So there are around 21,000 companies which are under this ambit, and they have to spend CSR. So when COVID came in, this act was enacted in 2013, and 2014 onwards they've been spending. So when COVID came in, most of the big companies had already established systems of doing CSR in a strategic manner, because they had to do it as per compliance, whether out, like many of the companies were doing out of passion before also. It's not that CSR was something introduced that time, but as a compliance it was introduced in 2013. And the companies who fall in that ambit already had established systems of doing corporate social responsibility. So I think this pandemic has taught us, has brought in three aspects outside. One is the success, like as Christabel said, that it has done something good also. We have had a great learning experience also. So the system, the companies like Marico, I'm very happy to hear, who already had established mechanisms, established standard operating measures in place, or strategy in place, and were doing good, they could create some success stories, great success stories, which created benchmarks, which created, example to lead by, and then really helped and showed that impact on the ground also. that, for example, the companies who had responsible business practices in place could do their business, could take care of their hygiene, could take care of the health, could take care of the control over the situation, and also helped the community by involving and by getting involved in combating this pandemic by doing various CSR projects. So they have created success stories. Many of the companies who had established this mechanism after the enactment of law already had systems, but they had to take up some correction measures, because this is like they had their learning, so they had to change themselves from what they were and establish new mechanism, new strategies, new standard operating procedures in order to combat, in order to help, in order to create that community impact. And the third would be concern, as this is unprecedented, and we did not know, or we did not foresee such a situation. The entire world, in fact, is struggling. But again, when it comes to India, there have been companies who have come forward because there was government efforts. Government created a fund called India Cares, and then many of the companies contributed towards it. Many of the philanthropists and HNIs and wigs who could part with their money contributed towards this funds, and this funds is taking care of a lot of problems which are already in place, and the mechanisms have been established. Now those concerns, when you talk about, then it is the contingencies. It is not just 2%, but as Christabel said, 98% out of which they make profit. So when we talk about CSR, it is not just CSR. CSR is just 2%. It is more to do with that 98%, how that money has been made, or how companies are taking care of their social, environmental, and economic responsibilities. And you can sustain only if you're taking care of these three obligations: your social obligations, your environmental obligations, and of course your economic obligations. Because we have seen things which we had not even anticipated in any form or any manner, but still it has been tackled with, it has been taken care of. Now they say that pandemic is little in control, and like we are able to even bring in vaccine. But like the government of India has done certain amendments also in the law by promoting that the companies who are can take this as CSR expenditure in case if they have to take care of say research and development methodologies to develop vaccine and other things. But main thing I would like to emphasize is that the companies definitely would have to put in the responsible business practices in place in order to sustain. Otherwise, as we have seen, many companies have failed. As I said, the concerns, many companies are doing correction methodology, putting corrections mechanism in place. Many companies have created success stories. So I think these are the points which companies need to deliberate upon in order to create that impact, in order to be prepared for any other such contingencies. Because it's not like that corona has gone, the COVID has been taken care of. It is still there, and the companies will have to change their ways in case if they want to combat and they want to create that kind of impact. So I would stop at that and would ask, would invite questions in case of that.
Okay, thank you, Gayatri. We are already getting some questions, both for Gayatri and Christabel. Questions from different channels, like we have already live this program in Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn. So there also people are watching and they are asking questions. So I will ask all these questions to you end of this session. The viewers, please keep patience, because let us know the experience and also the insights from the speakers, and then certainly we'll come back to your questions. Uh, uh, so Now, Gayatri, I have another question to you, but before that, I think I can go to Tahmida Appa, because I have something to know from Tahmida Appa. So, Appa, can you share us that as a regulator, how regulation affects corporate social responsibility, corporate environmental performance under different regulatory scenarios? Uh, Certainly we'll talk about the pandemic issue, but before that, if you can share with us about this situation, what about the regulator's role on this sector?
Okay, thank you, Sumaya and Esa Reshia, for giving me the opportunity to express my views and Bangladesh from Bangladesh Bank about CSR and other regulatory issues linked to CSR. I feel very much privileged to have this platform. So you know well that in 2008, our CSR guidelines was first issued for mainstreaming the CSR practices in the banks and financial institutions. So before that, many banks were doing CSR activities, but those are merely charitable activities or like donation or other charity scholarships, like these activities. But the main intention of Bangladesh Bank as a regulator is to bring the CSR initiatives into the channel of the business case, to show them the business case of CSR. CSR uh, can only be the charitable activities. It must have some business purposes, some business cases. So in 2008, the main objective of the guideline was to give instruction to the banks about what could be their business cases. And again, while they are reporting their CSR activities to Bangladesh Bank in half-yearly basis, we have seen that they are not actually uh, properly following the instructions of the central bank. Why? Because we have instructed them to use the social responsible guidelines of other countries or other international agencies like Equator Principle or UNGC or GRI. So mainly we have instructed them to report in the form of GRI, but they failed. So in 2014, we have revisited the previous guidelines, which is which is also existed simultaneously, but in 2014 we have instructed them about uh, how to allocate the budget in different sectors. Like there are some prominent sectors like education, health, climate risk fund, and other like disaster management, art and culture, and mainly for underprivileged people. But you have said earlier that CSR can't be only for underprivileged people in this pandemic situation. I will come to this point later, but our main motto was to guide the banks and non-bank financial institutions to pull the underprivileged and poor people of remote areas of the country. So the division was the percentage of, like that from the total CSR budget, 30% should be in education sector, 20% in health sector, 10% in the climate risk fund, and other 40% in other areas. But while in 2020, the COVID-19 appeared in Bangladesh Bank, acted immediately. In March 2020, Bangladesh Bank issued 2 instructions simultaneously, instructed banks about what to do regarding the pandemic. So first of all, they are instructed to increase their percentage of health sector, which was only 20%, and the rest 40% was added to this 20%. That means apart from education and climate risk fund of 30 and 40%, the total 60% will be spent in health sector in this COVID situation. And this spending should be in the district level. That was mentioned in the circular. This is another initiative, and their initiative should not be in form of donation or charitable activities. It should be like they should go for infrastructural development, or they will provide help for the hospitals and doctors and support staffs, like medical instruments and PPE and other vaccine related activities, research related activities. All these are included here. So the main challenge I feel after that circulars, that banks are mainly donating their funds into the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. Out of 59 banks, 36 banks have reacted to the circulars of Bangladesh Bank, and they provided their CSR funds to Prime Minister's Relief Fund. And apart from that, some 9-10 banks are doing really great regarding this situation. They have their own initiatives apart from the relief fund, and they even their workers, their employees are giving their salaries to the top management, in the hand of top management, to give the poor people support from their salaries. So from regulators' point of view, if I recall your question, we have tried our best to give adequate instructions and directions to the banking sector and also non-bank financial institutions to how to spend their CSR funds and how to increase their CSR funds and how to report their spending to us. And I am happy to say that we have taken an initiative to form a guideline according to the GRI, so that bank and non-bank financial institutions can have the feeling of relief to provide information in that form, because maybe they don't have enough capacity to deploy in this area, to follow the GRI format, to sustainability reporting issues. So we are formatting and drafting already we have doing that guidelines for them, and I think in 1 or 2 months we can circulate it for them. So this is the update till now, and if you have any other question, you can ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tahminda Appa. I just want to know one thing, that you said that as this is sometimes really difficult for the banks or also organizations, not only banks, to follow the GRI guideline, because this is very complicated and
Yes.
lots of information they have to
Yeah.
collect and all these things. Yeah, but which is good also. This is like if they can at least start this guideline. I mean, the GRI guideline, now it is a standard,
Yeah.
then it is also good for them for the consecutive years. But as you shared that Bangladesh Bank already drafted a format for reporting system, right?
Yes.
If if the banks cannot follow GRI reporting standard, then they can
Yes.
follow Bangladesh Bank's standard format,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But beside Bangladesh standard format, if they want to do GRI guideline or OECD or whatever, there are lots of sustainability reporting standard they can do also, right?
Yes. Of
Is there
course.
any flexibility or this?
Yes.
So
Always flexibility.
okay, so this is not mandatory that as you when you draft a format, then this is mandatory for banks. But
Yes.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So thank you. I will have more. Yeah,
Let me clear you. Uh,
yeah,
uh, what we are drafting is general format, which will be aligned to GRI. Not it. It will not replace GRI. So
yeah.
bank have the although it will have the flexibility to report in the format of GRI, but in case of our regulatory reporting, they will have to follow our format.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So with your format, they can follow. They can use any other formats also. I mean,
Yes.
in the essence of other format, they
Yeah.
have to comply with your format.
Yeah.
Bangladesh Bank's format. Yeah,
Yes.
that I can understand. And how Bangladesh Bank is guiding scheduled banks and NBFIs to support their clients, stakeholders during this pandemic. Though you shared already that
Yes.
Bangladesh Bank instructed in
Yeah.
different ways, but actually my question is how you will monitor, what is the monitoring system that banks are, because banks are putting their fund in prime minister office, fine, but how banks are confirmed that yes their funds are going to the right place, yeah, and how Bangladesh Bank also monitor these things.
You know, in our 2014 guideline, we have stated that Bangladesh Bank will monitor the CSR activities of banks and NBFIs through offsite, both offsite and onsite monitoring system. We have our offsite supervision department in which they report their activities, and in our department in which I'm working, Sustainable Finance Department, we collect their reporting biannually. So if we can finalize the reporting format, which is aligned with the GRI format, then their reporting will be more transparent. And we are working hard on it so that the monitoring and supervision is ensured. And another practice is our on-site monitoring. We have four departments engaged in banking inspections, and while they are in the process of their regular inspection, we have included or ingrained some of the CSR issues so that they can recheck and cross-check. So in that manner, we are monitoring nowadays. Yeah, in future, we will be able to monitor more stringently if the reporting format is finalized.
Okay, thank you, Tamita Appa. I will come back to you later on of this webinar. I have many things to discuss with you regarding this CSR and sustainability reporting. And yes, we have some questions now for the speakers from the attendees and also some other medias. So coming back to Chris Chevel. Ajay, okay, let me come back to Gayatri first. Gayatri has some questions. And then I will come back to Christabel. Gayatri, you have a questions that what went wrong that highest COVID cases?
Sorry? Please
What,
repeat.
what went wrong that India has second highest COVID cases?
Because of the population. India is the highest population also. So you have to just go through, it has to be proportionate to the population. Like, for example, today's report in the newspaper says that Delhi has 4,000 cases, but just because 55,000 were tested. So definitely the number of testing will be proportionate to the number of cases which are identified.
Okay.
And I have one more question which you have typed, which says that how far the CSR policies of India has been of real help required during this pandemic, meaning how CSR policies has been of help. So here I would like to say that Government of India has been, issuing a lot of notices. And first of all, I talked about PM CARES, but the question came which you only said just now, how that money will be audited or how that money can be controlled or monitored. So many of the corporates are reluctant to give that money to PM CARES. So Government of India or Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued guidelines, has issued clarifications that apart from testing for COVID patients, there are few other areas also which you can help to combat pandemic, out of which scientific research for the development of drugs of COVID-19, as I said, manufacture or distribution of kits for testing the disease is second one, providing quarantine facilities to those affected, mass training of doctors, nurses, and paramedical staff, distribution of food and arrangement of shelter for doctors and paramedical staff is another one, opening of sanitation facilities, mobile and stationary, and training of workers for the same can also be under CSR, is done also by various companies. Distribution of food, medicine, financial support to the poor daily wage workers who are forced to stay at home during the lockdown is also one of them. Arrangement of ambulance and corpse carriers if required is also one of them. Mass supply of protective gears like gloves and caps, masks, etc. is also is there. And transport facilities for medical and paramedical staff and other supporting staff can also be taken under CSR. So all the government has been issuing clarifications. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs has been issuing clarifications to all the corporates, urging them to come forward, because in the law it says that any kind of CSR activity has to be in project mode. So this can be taken up as a project and can be, because as I said, COVID may be here to stay, but at least if you have a long-term and short-term project in place, you can, using all these narratives which I've just described, you can use and combat this pandemic. And one more thing I would like to say is Government of India has also issued one more clarification, because till now anything that you do in the core of as your core business was not considered as CSR. But then this, for next 3 years, that is 2021, 2022 and 2023, it has been clarified that even if you are involved in, say, drug manufacturing or any kind of research and development is your core business, but you would like to do work on towards COVID-19, you can use your CSR funds for that, provided the entire principle is based on the fact that you need to disclose what you're doing and report to ministry. So it is there in public domain what companies are doing. Thank you.
Okay, and you have another question, Gayatri, that as you came from policymakers, so how far the CSR policy in India has been of
That's what I said just now.
yeah,
I
yes,
read that question and answered
but,
that question.
yeah, but okay, so okay, yeah.
I said that
During
yes,
pandemic.
it has
Okay.
been of
Okay.
help.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Thank you, Gayatri, because you know that I have to also track the questions. So
I
Gayatri, tell
understand.
me
I
the
understand.
Christabel. So I was just missed. Yes, you mentioned this question.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Gayatri. And now I'm coming to Christabel. That as there is two questions for Christabel's. The first question is that, as Mariko mentioned, that they use technologies to facilitate business during this time, how they used field people and where they were used.
Actually, I think all of us have learned to use technology, and this webinar is an example of that, clear example of that.
Absolutely.
So, Mayapa, 25th March, actually, when the government declared the general holiday, from that time we went on a work from home modality, not only for office-based people. The entire sales team was also moved to an work from home modality, and that may sound very surprising. That how can a sales team work from work from home? But that is what we did, because actually, with this being so uncertain, and it's still uncertain to a large extent for all of us, we could not take any risk on health and safety. uh, with where technology is concerned, actually Marico has been using technology in its sales system even before the pandemic. So order tracking, taking orders on PDAs and things like that, those were all in place even long before this pandemic had happened. So all it meant is remodeling your sales operations a little bit so that your field people are not out in the field, and using more of the e-commerce delivery channels to actually directly service consumers. And this is something which consumer product companies, I think, all over the world have done. Lessen their own manpower so that you don't have people out, you contain the spread, and see what are the common alternative channels that you can use. So when I say technology, obviously, now we have limited number of people who are out in the market, but like I said, we have the PDAs, we have the order tracking, and during that very sensitive time when the general holiday was operating, we leveraged the partnerships that we had with e-commerce platforms and those technologies to actually ensure that sales is continuing. And one thing I would like to say, and yes, at the cost of boasting, we were the first organization to actually pay salaries in advance, not just for people who are our own members or our own employees, but we ensured it right across the value chain, even for distributors to be paying their employees in advance, and unconditional humanitarian allowances. Because we have to remember that, that sales guy is probably thinking, how is he going to buy sanitizers when the prices of all these things have skyrocketed? So ensuring, providing everyone with the personal PPE. So whether it was people who are in sales when they did go back to the field, or whether it was people in factory, we ensured that nobody had to purchase those personal protective equipment on their own. Nobody had to purchase the hand sanitizers on their own, and we continued to provide that.
Yes, before starting the webinar, we also had the discussion, this kind of discussion, that what actually going on with the organizations. If organization have a proper SOP, and if there is a proper strategy, then during such situation, organizations will not be like in a yes, I am in middle of the sea. It is not like this. So any disaster or any unexpected situation come, then at least organization have some plan B, plan C. And already if there is, as you mentioned, that Marico, not now, but before pandemic also, Marico is highly technical organizations also for sales especially. So this is good. Okay, Christabel, another question to you is that good to know that Marico did well. Please share what specific measure they took to implement health and already mentioned some health and security guidelines and what challenges they face to regulate, as Mariko mentioned that they use technologies to facilitate business during this time.
Tumayapa, actually, the biggest challenge we faced was all of us, not just for people who are on the ground or who are in factories. For all of us, adopting to these new hygiene habits was about habit forming. So we had to ensure, like I said initially, ensure continuous communication, continuous education to everybody. Whether it's factory workers, whether it's delivery men, whether it's distributors, whether it's our own employees. So awareness, communication training on the protocols, which of course were advised by the World Health Organization, and then the government of Bangladesh also, IEDCR came up with their own protocols, which we followed and implemented across our supply chain. Factories, of course, had thermal temperature scanning, operating with absolutely critical only workforce. মানে I'll just switch to Bengali for the sake of convenience. মানে যাদেরকে না হলে একেবারে মিনিমাম একটা লাইন চালানোর জন্য বা একটা মানে প্রোডাকশন চালানোর জন্য মিনিমাম যতটুকু দরকার। So having that, ensuring the washing facilities, the thermal temperature scanning, temperature recording. First thing in the morning, we all had to, take our temperatures wherever we are, report it into the organization. And also, when I talk about measures with regard to members, uh, these were standard things. And when we talk about factories, the Ministry of Health, the DGHS specifically, issued a very comprehensive technical manual about how to maintain occupational health and safety during this time. So we had our own measures. Not even most, I think all of them were in line with that manual. Some of them maybe even extended beyond that. So having those personal protective equipment, all the washing facilities, hygiene facilities, recording, continuous communication, awareness is what helped us actually get through this challenge with, very basically no interruptions. The other thing also which we had done, I would say, is reduction in the type of the type of additional activities. So sometimes as organizations we do additional activities, so we cut down all of that and only whatever was essential to ensure supply of consumer products to the market, bare essential, that is what we had continued. And like I said, ensuring that people's the biggest security and sense of comfort we could give our members and the people in our value chain was to ensure that their employment, their livelihoods were secure, and that health, safety, and securing those livelihoods was the first priority which we had done. As far as CSR is concerned, yes, we did kind of contribute to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. As Tamidapa also said, that a lot of organizations chose to do that. We had also done that. For communities surrounding our factories where our manufacturing operations are, we had month-long food relief programs, because like I said, to support the people who are daily laborers or casual workers. At the same time, we undertook a product-led commitment, because for our hand sanitizers, we have a commitment which is public and declared that it will be on a no profit, no loss basis, so that it is the most affordable product on the in the market. And secondly, this any profit that we do make from those sales for the first 6 months will again be given back to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund to support the COVID recovery efforts. So, uh, you know, those are in summary, briefly speaking, those are some of the measures, the key highlights that I would like to, talk about.
Yes, thank you, Christabel. This is also nice to know. I did not know many things about you, about your organization. This is really good to know. Tahmida Appa, you also have some question. I don't know whether this is really fit to you, but yes, what specific measures Bangladesh Bank has taken to help business in Bangladesh during this pandemic? If she can share some.
Okay. To help businesses are run uh, from the fund from banks, and we are guiding banks to uh, provide some stimulus packages. You know, uh, apart from the CSR activities, these there are some stimulus packages for the SMEs and for other organizations at lower rates, so that they can survive in this situation, in this pandemic situation. And terms and conditions are very relaxed for these packages. And uh, apart from CSR, businesses will be helped from the perspective of the regulator, or from the perspective of Bangladesh Bank, through banking sector, through these stimulus packages. There is no other option for Bangladesh Bank to uh, give advantage to businesses. So they have to go to banks uh, for their needs, and if they are in a position to have the avail the facilities, they are welcome from the banks. I'm now talking from the side of the commercial banks, because we are just giving the policy and fund, and bank and non-bank financial institutions have to do the rest of the things.
Okay, yes, rightly what you said, Tamidapa, Bangladesh Bank does not have the direct
Yes.
interaction with business or business
Yes.
entity or any other entity, because
Yes.
Bangladesh Bank is the regulatory agency of only scheduled banks and
Yes.
FIs. So indirectly, there are lots of contribution Bangladesh Bank is providing through banks and financial institutions.
Yes.
But there is a CSR fund which is directly funded by Bangladesh Bank to
Yes.
implement some CSR projects. So, is it for any private? Can you
Uh,
tell about
yeah.
about this?
Okay. Okay. Let me talk about CSR fund of Bangladesh Bank, which is very small amount. Only the amount is 10 crore yearly amount, and it is used for mainly poor and disadvantaged and underprivileged people, and for organizations working for them, they can avail the CSR fund if there are some uh, there is a guideline. If they are fit in the criteria stated in the guideline, they can apply to us and they can avail the fund. This is not a very cumbersome process, and we have also supervision and monitoring activities for this fund also. We post and pre and post inspections are done for the organizations who are applied and disbursed fund. And it is from 2013. The fund is created in 2013 and successfully run throughout these years. So yes, apart from the stimulus packages or refinancing activities through this CSR fund, Bangladesh Bank can help the business organizations, but there are some criteria, and we don't have actually any specific program for the pandemic situation.
So, as you rightly said that every year this fund is disbursed. So, how
Yeah.
many successful projects as of now you have Bangladesh Bank has done through
Many.
this project?
It's almost 100 plus.
No, okay, that's a good number.
Yeah.
And there is a very basic question, Tamidapa, what kind of internal work culture changes Bangladesh Bank has come up
Okay. Oh,
this
it
time?
is like any other organization. Not, it is not an exception. We are using both work from home activities, job rostering, and we are using hand sanitizers, using the thermal machine, and social distancing and masks. All all that is narrated by WHO and other government organizations, health organizations of Bangladesh.
Okay.
We don't have any special activities. We are all yeah, we are all same.
Yes, you are also, Bangladesh Bank also is a organization. So
Yeah.
like other organization, what, because they have more responsibility because they are providing the guidelines. So
Yeah.
they also have to measure this.
we have to ingrain it within ourselves, and we have to instruct the banks also.
Yes, right. Okay, thank you very much. Before we are very close to end this webinar, and before closing it, I just want to share one information. This is also my responsibility, as Arisha given me, that every webinar I have to declare the next program. So that is we also have a Social International Dialogue 2020 webinar series from 15 to 17. 15, 16, and 17 on different topics. It is available in our website, in our social media platform. You can just register so that you can directly ask question to the speakers, interact with the speakers. Otherwise, you can get live webinar in different social media where it is very difficult to pick the questions from there. So, however, thank you very much, Christabel, Gayatri, and Kaji Tahmida, for your contribution today. And I think that this discussion is not only discussion for today; it will have a very good impact to the people, because there are lots of important issues coming over through this discussion. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you. Good night.